I think it's time to get started, isn't it? Is the technique ready for the live streaming as well? Yes? Good. Welcome everyone to this session on Towards Disability Inclusive Land Rights. And we will also talk about, of course, about food security as well, because you cannot take these two apart, land rights and food security. A warm welcome, also the people who are online. And there is a 30 seconds delay with the people who are online. So bear with us, it's gonna be very exciting and a surprise how that works out. But we're really happy to have you here in the room and to have all these people online. So let's get started. And first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Pauline Bruin. I'm representing DCDD here today, the Dutch Coalition on Disability and Development. And we are organizing this session as part of WeAreAble. We will tell more about that in that session. But I will not be the only one on stage today. So I would like to kindly ask Inge to stand up, and so also the people online can see who you are. So we're really happy to have Inge today in this session, Inge Vos, and she is food security specialist at ZOA and also engaged in this WeAreAble food security program. And she will share experiences today about disability inclusive land rights with us. So great, thank you. And our second speaker is Michelle van Raalte. She works at VNG International and is also involved in the WeAreAble program. So happy to have you here today. Thank you. There are live captions available. If you want to follow that live captions, you can go to dcdd.intellitext.us. But the captioners are also online, so if you're here in the room and you want to follow the captions, you have a 30 seconds delay. So anyway, that's that, you know it. So what are we going to do today? Of course, we start with an introduction, and we're really gonna make it interactive today. I think in the workshop folders and the app it says we will have 2 hours, but that's, I mean, we really like each other, but it will be 1.5 hours only. And don't be scared to, if you have another meeting or things going on, to go there. But 1.5 hours, that's what we're gonna do. And we will start after the introduction. We will start with an inclusive land game or exercise. And then Inge will share about the barriers that persons with disabilities are coming across and how to overcome them. And she will tell and share the stories of persons with disabilities. Ideally, we would have invited people from the South to speak for themselves, but technically that was not possible, so we decided to make a video and share cases here today. And then Michelle will explain about the role of local governments in promoting food security, disability, inclusive food security and land rights. And of course there's time for a discussion, a debate. So I'm looking forward to this 1.5 hours, and let's get started. We will use menti.com in this session, and it works best on your cell phone. So if you go to menti.com or scan the QR code, you can use code 5439408. Five 4394408. So when you're joining online, you might see the Mentimeter questions a bit ahead of the presentation. So you can already start filling in the questions while you are following the live stream, but we'll figure out how it works. Yes, and the codes will show again later. But first, before we go into interaction and talking with each other, I would like to explain why do we have this session here today. And when it comes to the global goals, of course, zero hunger is something we are working towards. But reports and monitoring data already show that persons with disabilities are lagging behind. So if we strive for zero hunger, we really must make sure that persons with disabilities are included. So I've put 3 pictures here, one with zero hunger, one with leave no one behind, and also the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is really the fundamentals where persons with disabilities also have the rights to access a living, earning income, and things like that. So it's really important that we take that into account. So that is our motivation for the session today, and we really hope it will help you to learn more about the topic. So enough talking for me. I would really love to know who are here together today in the room and listening online. So what type of organization are you engaged with? So is it NGO, government, research, private, organization of persons with disabilities, or maybe other? Other is also interesting. A lot of NGOs in the room, and I think the results from the people online will also start coming in quite soon. So also private sector, nice, good, welcome. Research, government. That's great. Yeah, we have this delay, so it's interesting to see. Yay. But, okay, there's a lot of NGOs here today. Great. And I think when it comes to inclusive land rights, inclusive food security, there is a role to play for all different kind of actors. So we will look in that today as well. And I think it's good to think also what could be your role when it comes to this topic. Okay, I think we can move on to the next one. How familiar are you with the topic of disability inclusive land rights or disability inclusive food security? And there are different options there. It's completely new for me. I heard about it, but I don't know examples. I know disability inclusive land right food security initiatives, or I am involved or have been involved on this topic. So I see about for some people it's really new. 10 people heard about it, but no concrete results. Some people know some initiatives, and also quite a lot of people who do have experience. 12 people who say, yay, I have experience on this topic. So it's really nice that we have a mix of people listening in today and here in the room who know more or less about the topic. So great, that's really nice. Okay, well, that was just a warming up for today. And if there are questions here in the room, you can raise your hand. We have a microphone and walk around. And also the people online can send their reactions via the chat. So we will monitor that as well. So I would like to start with a small exercise. And some of you may know this exercise. It's called, well, Inclusive Land Rights Game. And we have 4 persons or personas who are playing this game together. And so we are in a village in northern Uganda. It's a small town, and there are 4 persons there. There is a woman without a disability, there is a man without a disability, and a woman with a disability, and a man with a disability. And they are going through different steps in life, especially also related to land rights. And then we're going to see how successful they are. And I have asked 4 volunteers before we started the session. So I would like to ask the volunteers to come and stand here in the middle of the room. And you can stand with the 4 people in one line. You're all going to start at the same level. And the interesting thing is we're going to do this exercise. So you are the public. You can vote how successful these different characters are going to be in the different steps in life. And then we can see what are the results, and then these 4 volunteers will take steps based on the scoring that's coming out of it. So it's a bit like a new way of doing this exercise. So I'm really I'm scared actually to find out if it works or not. So let's see if it works. Is it clear so far? We'll see with the first question, right? So the first step in life. How likely is it that this persona is going to school and finishes primary education? So then you first have to answer for a woman without a disability, a man without a disability, a woman with a disability, or a man with a disability. So if it's very likely that this persona is going to school, then you say very likely or not likely or something in between. And you can keep someone in mind, a person with a specific kind of disability. We'll find out what the results are. So the results are coming in. And of course, this is not scientific. It's just for the exercise. So I think the people online are still voting. But what we can see is that a woman without a disability is now scoring 3.4, a man without a disability around 4.3, a woman with a disability 1.8, and a man with a disability 2.4. And I will explain a bit about the scoring and the steps now, because that might be a bit complicated. So if it's 3, you just stay on your place. If it's 4, you can take a big 4.3. So the man without a disability in this case can take a very big step forward. Yes? So your leaflet there, men without a disability, is also pink. So it corresponds with the colors here. And the woman without a disability, you can stay more or less at the same level. And for the woman with a disability, it's a 1.8, 1.7. So you can take a big step backwards. Sorry about that. And the man with a disability can take a small step backwards. Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to the next question. How likely does this persona is getting married and starting their own household? So put in your scores there again. Ooh. Now the scores are very explicit this time. Both men and women without a disability are scoring like up to 5 almost. A woman with a disability has a very lower score, around 2, and a man with a disability 2.5. So what does it mean that both men, the man without a disability can take 2 steps forward? 1, 2. Woman without a disability, almost also 2 steps. Great, thank you. A woman with with a disability. Ooh, you take one big step backwards. And the man with a disability, small step backwards. All right, thank you. We will have a discussion about these outcomes later on, so you can speak up later as well. All right, another step in life. A family meeting is organized to decide on selling part of the family land. How likely is it that your opinion of this persona is taken into account? What do you think? You can give your scores here again. Ooh. Okay, well, what do we see? A woman without a disability. It's a 2.5, so you can take a small step back, unless the public online is going to vote you up, but I'm afraid there is a big difference with the men without a disability. You can take 2 steps. Yeah, I hope you will not leave the room with us. A woman with a disability, again, 2 steps backwards. I'm sorry, also. Don't make 2 big steps, otherwise you are against the wall very soon. And a man with a disability, again, small step backwards. All right, time for the next question. Thank you. How likely is it that this persona will inherit an equal share of the land when the father of the family dies? Again, it's not scientific, and probably you don't know Northern Uganda, but at least it's trying to get an idea. Bert, you have to take 2 steps forward again. The man without a disability. Take small steps, please, because otherwise the message is getting clear, right? The woman without a disability. You can take 1 step back. A woman with a disability, I'm sorry, it's other step back. And a man with a disability, small step back. Okay, well, suppose you have earned a share, and the land administration office is in the district capital, on the 2nd floor. How likely is it that this persona can get there without any problems? Let's say it's about 20 kilometers away, rural area. So, how difficult is it to get there? The votes are coming in. And let's see, I guess it's clear, men without a disability. Well, you can take 1 step forward. Woman with disability, you can also take a small step forward. And both women and men with disabilities have more or less the same scores, are both 1 step backwards. All right, good. This is almost the last question. No, it's the second last. A neighbor is encroaching on your land of this persona. How likely is it that this persona can make the neighbor leave the land? Is the question clear? So the votes are coming in. Oh, there seems a big gender difference here. I think, again, men with a disability, would you take without a disability? Yeah, would you take that step? Woman without a disability, I think you can take a small step back. A man with a disability, also a Well, yeah, one step back. And a woman with disability. Ooh, yeah, 2 steps back. I'm so sorry. Okay. And then, finally, an NGO comes in to help landless farmers. How likely is it that this persona is able to benefit from this program? So this is the last question. And then we are going to reflect on the exercise. I think it's the pattern is clear, right? Well, look at that. Seems less gender difference here. So I think it's a tough competition with. But I think what we can conclude while the last scores are coming in, that a woman without a disability can take 1 step forward. Yeah, you can take a bigger step. Yeah, thank you. Men with disability, 4.1, just a big step forward. And woman with disability, 2.2, so you can take 1 last step backwards. And a man with disability, also 1 step backwards. All right, this was the last step in this land rights game. And maybe for the people online, you can fill in what did you learn from this exercise. But if you're here in the room, I would like to hear your opinion. But I would love to go first to the woman with a disability, because she is here way back. I just would like to see, how do you feel being back here?
It was confirming my suspicions. I wasn't counting on more than this.
Yeah, so it's in line with what you expected. And how do you look at that?
It's like it is expected, but it still hurts. Even though I'm not actually the person, it's still, the difference is so clear, and that's really, really sad.
Okay. So you're representing a woman without a disability. How do you feel about being here? Is it expected?
Well, I'm looking forward and I'm looking back, and I feel like I'm a bit in the middle. So it depends on who you compare it with. A man without a disability, I'm still quite behind, but a man or a woman with a disability, I'm so far in front, so I'm a bit in the middle here. Yeah.
Well, thank you for playing this role, man without a disability. How do you feel? Was it expected?
Yes, this was expected. A bit of embarrassing. And it shows that, of course, in the NGO business, there's a lot of attention for gender to make this gap smaller. But the disability, it's not really, I think, very much focus on.
I would love to hear from the public. What do you get? Well, what do you get from the exercise, or any reflections on the exercise? Is there anyone? Angela can give the microphone to.
Hello. I think that many of us were assuming that the disability was maybe a mobility disability, because we were very limiting the ability and options. But in fact, there are so many different types of disabilities. It could be visual, it could be hearing related, and it may not affect the person as severely as we think. But I think for the purpose of the exercise, it was a good exercise to think about it.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, I am a woman with a disability, and it's for me, it was a real situation. And I'm from the Netherlands, and I recognize this situation. I'm always fighting for my place because I'm a woman with a disability. And people say to me, why you don't marry with a man who care for you? And I'm a married woman, but I get still this comments, and that's sometimes painful.
Yeah, so there are a lot of prejudices on that part. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think there online there are also some reactions. Is there something that pops out?
I think the main one is that this exercise makes the difference, the privilege gap, as one of these people puts it, very visible. It's a very visual representation of maybe, yes, a more summarized or overall picture, but it paints a very stark picture of what the reality is. And I think most of these comments reflect kind of that experience.
Well, thanks. Maybe we can give a big applause for the volunteers. And you can take your seat again. Thanks a lot. Yeah. And of course, this is just to get an impression. And it depends on context, on what kind of family you're born in, what kind of impairment you have, etc. And in the presentations, you will hear more about what kind of barriers do both men and women with disabilities come across in accessing land. So I would like to give Inge the floor to share these experiences with us. Yes? Yeah. Does it work for you?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of devices.
Okay, let me put it here.
Yeah.
Start
Perfect.
this here.
Microphone for you?
Microphone.
Clicker.
And the clicker. So I think I'm all set. I think I'm all set. Yes. Use the microphone. Yeah, well, thank you, Pauline, for this session. I think this makes it very clear, and like we all said, it was more or less expected. But I hear the word painful also very often. It's painful. We know it, but still, you see it now. It's visualized. These differences for persons with a disability. Yeah. So let me see. Yes. So yeah, today we talk here at the World Food Day, we talk about transforming food systems in a changing world. And yes, as we are seeing, there's a big difference for persons with a disability because these changes, like climate change, they have a larger impact on persons with a disability. Because, yeah, persons with a disability are the ones with the least resources. So they are the most resource poor people. So when these resources get more scarce, then also they are more impacted. So, yeah, looking at the changes, the challenges of the changing world and the impacts, we do have to also look at it, yeah, in an inclusive way, and also look at what does it mean for persons with a disability. So yeah, that means make food systems more inclusive. And also, well, we looked at a woman with a disability, a man with a disability. So also this intersectionality is important. And also when you look at land rights. So we will come back to that later. With the WeAreAble project, we work for we work with persons with a disability. And what we do is we try to improve their food security situation. And we do this by amplifying their voices. So we work with persons with a disability to enable them to become more resilient and also to stand up for their rights so that they themselves can improve their food security situation. We work in a consortium with ZOA, the Leprosy Mission, and the CU Foundation, and ADF. ADF is the African Disability Forum. They have a lot of organizations also in the countries where we work. And we work with the partners VNGI and the Hague Academy and DCDD. Well, we work at various levels for inclusive food security, and later Michelle will explain more about that, so I will not go too much into detail. But yeah, we work with the communities, making communities more aware, work with organizations for persons with a disability, so the OPDs, and also work with the local governments, work with the governments at various levels, actually. And we have different strategies to work on inclusive food security. And one of the strategies that we want to look at more closely in this session is to improve the land rights for persons with a disability. So looking at inclusive land rights. The WeAreAble project works in 6 countries in Africa. We work in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in Congo, Burundi, and in Sudan and South Sudan. And in the countries Uganda, Congo, and Burundi, we work on inclusive land rights. So we will focus a bit more on that in this session. So first we will look now at the video.
Mimi kuzaliwaka niko mlemavu. Nilikuwa mlemavu hapa mu 2005. Après kujilese, mimi naona nabo bananiachilia, mimi nabakia tu hali ile ya chini sana. Juu ya maumivu, mimi naona wenzetu gisi tulikomalana nabo, hao wako nakimbia. Mie wapi siwezi tembea. Basi, mimi naona tu ni maumivu tu ndani ya roho.
Nyuma siku chache magonjwa yakanikamata wala na niko msomo la 3 na nikaendelesha tu shule na niko tu natambala chini. Mena wakati nilikuwa mwa ile situation jamais ikani abandonner. Bakaanza ona kama mie hivi nimekuwa mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu sifai tena. Juba naona sibafalie tena. Mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu habata mtumaka sea aenda abaletee mai, hata enda chunga mbuzi, kuku vile. Nikabakia tu niko basi pale bila hata consideration ya mtu.
Yenye binatuma mimi naanza jisikia na mimi nezijisikia sa vile wengine. Kuko mafundisho zenye zilikuya na zoa, mafundisho zenye balikuwa banaleta ba sensibilisateur mwingine, bako natafuta watu wenye wanaishi na ulemavu, bakakuwa banatutia mu maformation zimwazimoya, natufundishe gisi kwenye banakuwa banatuona, kwenye banaona mwingine mwanateseka zaidi hata ya mie, banakuwa banamjogeza pamoja nao, kama kukula tunakula pamoja, kama kunywa ka fanta tunakunywa pamoja, hapana kutubagua.
Wakati projet WeAreAble ilikuya, bakatuita watu ambao wanaishi na ulemavu, wakatuita kwanza en particulier, wakatupatia mafundisho. Après cela bakaita sasa majama, baka invite bamoya bakaingia mwa ile mafundisho. Bakakuwa banaonesha kie mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu hata mwa ile hali naye ni mtu kama vile watu wengine.
Le programme WeAreAble est très important parce qu'il a aidé beaucoup de personnes vivant avec handicap d'être reconsidérées dans la société, des personnes qui étaient marginalisées, des personnes qui étaient rejetées. Aujourd'hui, se voient vivre encore une fois en société.
Zamani nilikuwa siwezi jipatia hata na 1000 francs hii yenye mtu anaweza uza vitika. Lakini paka hivi Mungu anaanza saidia. Jo mimi peke mimi naanza ingia mshamba, mimi nalima, après kulima, mimi navuna, juu nilikuwa msijitegemee. Jusqu'à présent kupitia mafundisho ya WeAreAble ilinisaidia sana, juu paka hivi mimi sikuwa na nyumba, mepaka hapa na mimi naanza itwa mwanaume, niko na nyumba, niko na mwanamke, niko na mtoto.
Donc ils sont devenus indépendants, ils sont devenus autonomes. Des gens qui étaient autrefois vus comme de personnes non importantes pour la société, aujourd'hui ils sont capables de nourrir leur famille, ils sont capables de prendre soin de leurs enfants, de leurs femmes. Et pour nous, ça c'est quelque chose à encourager.
Kwangu binafsi, mabadiliko yenye nilikuwa naona, jamaa ilikuwa inaanza zogea kwenye niko. Banaanza kama kuko kakikao, mimi naona bananiita, wane tuko na kakikao, naona iweze ingia ndani. Kufatana ile mabadiliko, nikapata kaakse kushamba. Et pourtant, balikuwa sikukua hata na ile nani ya kusema, kenda pataka kale. Nikaona ile projet vraiment WeAreAble inanisaidia sana.
Ile projet WeAreAble nimezipigia kwanza mkono. Mungu aibariki sana, iendelee mbele, ikuwe inatuletea mafundisho ya kutufundisha gisi ya kuishi na watu, gisi ya kuangalia mbele, gisi na mtu yepeka na hizi sasa tumika sana zaidi kusudi afikie lengo ingine zaidi ya yenye mie ni nilifikia.
Yeah, so these were two examples of participants in the WeAreAble project in Congo. To give an idea about how important it is to start this conversation within the community, within the households, and also within the organizations of persons with a disability, that they can also advocate for the rights of persons with a disability. And you see with these men what a difference that makes, that they have access to land that they can provide for their own family. So now some facts and figures. So worldwide, well, this morning there was this example also to say 1 out of so many, so 1 out of 7 people in the world live with some kind of disability. And it was already mentioned earlier in the session that there are many different kinds of disabilities and also different kind of impact. So it can be a visual impairment or a hearing impairment or a person in a wheelchair. It's all different barriers. And you see that in this Global South we have 55% of persons with disabilities experience food insecurity. So that's really more than half. And for the poverty line, it's even higher. Even 82% of the persons are below the poverty line. So it's really big numbers that we are talking about. In the countries where we work, most of the persons with disability live in the rural areas. In Uganda, for example, it's 90%. And there the land is managed customarily. And that also has an impact on what this family decides for the persons with a disability. Do they have access or not? How are they viewed? And in practice, this means that usually persons with a disability are not considered by the family, so they do not get access to land. Because we're talking about food security, it's important to realize that for all the 4 pillars of food security, there are different barriers for persons with a disability. For example, availability, there it starts that, it's difficult to produce on the land, or even if they don't have land. But then even if they have land, also the equipment is often not adapted for persons with a disability. So to be able to produce the food, that's already where it starts with. Then if food is available, also there are other constraints for persons with a disability to access the food. For example, the income generating opportunities are more limited, but also physical access. For example, going to the markets, that can also be complicated. Then for food utilization of children with a disability, for example, might be different kind of food that's required, but also children with a disability are often not so much considered by the family. They are seen as not that important, so they do not get the best feed. And for stability, persons with a disability are also not so much considered in the land management, planning and resource management planning. So also for stability, there are a lot of different constraints. So you see that in the whole food system, in all the 4 pillars of food security, there are different barriers for persons with a disability. A few examples of the barriers for physical access. And then we talk about worldwide. It's more than half of the restaurants worldwide that are not accessible for persons in a wheelchair. And then, persons who need to go to a food bank. Even 2 out of 5 food banks are not accessible for persons in a wheelchair. When you look at persons with a disability who depend on distributions, for example, the food distributions or cash distributions or non-food items, the percentage is as high as 87% that of persons with a disability that cannot access these distributions. So that's really a big problem. Well, as we know, in this session we look particularly at the land rights, and why is this so important to consider land rights for persons with a disability? Well, for the production, you depend on secure access to land. It's a valuable asset. So land scarcity is really a cause of poverty. So you need land. It's essential for reducing hunger, for food production, but also as a source of income. Then, even if you have access to land, it's also important that it's secure access to land for a long term, because usually farmers only invest in their land if it's secure, if it's for a long term. And these investments in land are, for example, on value chain development, producing for the market, but also for investing in the fertility of your land, your soil fertility. So what kind of agricultural systems you have? Do you invest in your soil? You will only do that when you know that you will be able to use this land for a long time. So the land is important for productive resource, generating an income, but also for the next generations. There are various barriers for persons with a disability, also when we look at land, secure land rights. First of all, looking at the legal barriers, so the laws. Often there are laws in place for persons with a disability that they do have a right to land, only they are not, these laws are not implemented by the governments, or people are not aware, the persons with a disability themselves or the family, they are not aware. So that's one of the problems. And then, cultural problems, cultural barriers. For example, inheritance is also a big problem. Persons with a disability are seen as, well, they cannot produce, they cannot cultivate the land properly, so they are not considered with inheritance. And then even at birth, the children with a disability are sometimes not even registered. So that means that they don't have the papers to go and register land. And then lastly, also the physical barriers. So already in the game we mentioned it's to travel to the office, to register the land. To have access to information, if you have a visual impairment, for example, if you cannot read the papers. So different physical barriers are there. Well, during the exercise, again, it became very clear that there is this intersectionality. So it's a big difference if you are a woman with a disability or a man with a disability. But also, it's important, the age. So the younger you are, the less probable that you have access to land. So a younger person with a disability, the chance that he or she has secure access to land is even lower. And also the marital status. So a person who is single or divorced, also then there's a big decrease of the probability of having a secure access to land. Now something different, the PIP approach. Who knows the PIP approach? Well, very good, quite a few. The PIP approach is the Participatory Integrated Planning approach. It was developed by Wageningen University, and it has been used since 10 years. And in ZOA, we started using it in 2016 in Burundi. And we use the PIP approach now also in the WeAreAble project, because as you can see here, it's based on a household, community developing a vision together. And collaboration is a very important principle of the PIP approach. And based on a vision, people together develop a plan, and everybody is involved. So inclusion is very important in the PIP approach, and also inclusion of persons with a disability. And when developing a farm vision, of course, the land is a very important asset. So it's a way of starting the discussion about access to land. I will now read a few stories of persons in the WeAreAble project. And also there you will hear that they will talk about the PIP approach. So that's why I thought it's important to explain a little bit about it. I will start with the story of Anne-Marie. So this is Anne-Marie. I will read her story. Anne-Marie is the vice president of the OPD in Buganda in Cibitoke, Burundi. She tells that persons with a disability in her district are now included in the process of distribution of agricultural inputs. In this case, it was by FAO. Her OPD helped in the identification of households with persons with disabilities. Households participating in the PIP approach also advocate now for rights to access to these inputs. Anne-Marie has obtained her own land certificate. At first, she was not considered for having right to land by her family because, as they said, they have already invested so much in her. But with the help of the authorities and her own OPD, the family realized she has the right also. With her land certificate, she was able to ask for a credit to start her own income-generating activity, a welding workshop. She's the first person with a disability in her district to receive a credit on the basis of her land certificate. Her OPD also helped other persons with disability in registering their land and obtaining their land certificates. Then, the next story. This is the story of Mr. Barabara. Mr. Barabara is a farmer in Congo, and when disability inclusion facilitators of the WeAreAble project came to the community, and they started talking about the rights of persons with disabilities, including inheritance and land rights, Mr. Barabara was very encouraged. He is missing parts of both feet as a result of leprosy. And a long time ago, people around him started to exclude him. When asking him what changed for you, he explains, when the disability inclusion facilitators came and explained about land rights, I wanted to take immediate action, especially because 10 years ago I bought a field with my brother, but unfortunately he passed away a few months later. His son then took over the field, claiming that I couldn't cultivate it properly due to my disability. With the support of organizations within WeAreAble, the organization Opalco, which is the organization of persons affected by leprosy in Congo, and the community leaders, I filed a complaint with the village chief. Fortunately, he was already informed and made aware on inclusion and the rights of persons with disabilities. Everyone did their best to advocate for my case, and my land rights were restored. As a result, I could register my field with the Land Registry Office. Now I cultivate my own field without any hindrance, feeling accepted by my community. The cassava and maize harvest will improve the family income and food security. The last case I want to read is from Uganda, and this is the story of Florence. Florence is 49 years old. She's physically impaired, a single mother of 3 children. She was married, but unfortunately her husband passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2017. Immediately after the death of her husband, her in-laws started demanding for the land she and her late husband jointly bought. She tells, we had to move back to my father's house. My uncles, my father's brothers, refused to give me land for farming and settlement. When I heard about WeAreAble and the inclusive land rights program in my community, I attended and learned a lot about land rights, laws, and conflict management structures. I immediately shared this information with my brothers and sisters, and they agreed to call for a family meeting to resolve our concerns. Florence says, I was able to reclaim my land rights as my family members were able to allocate some piece of land both for farming and settlement. The WeAreAble program not only helped me reclaim my land rights, but also increased my level of participation in community initiatives. And I joined a savings group. I used to be very angry against my parents, other community members, and excluded myself from participating in community initiatives. But now I was elected to represent women with disabilities in my sub-county, which gave me great opportunity to interact with leaders and policymakers. Most of our members are having their own PIP plans for development through utilizing the locally available resources. This has helped to improve the livelihood and food security situation in their households. So this was the third case I read. The last case is from a woman. She's one of the disability inclusion facilitators in Congo, and that's the last video. It's a very short video. She will explain about her experiences, what it means, the WeAreAble project, and her work as a disability inclusion facilitator.
Telema kafika akaanza sensibilize walemavu. Sasa mkutusensibilize ndio watu wakaanza sikia kama mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu ni wa maana. Mpaka hivi tunaendelea kuishi mkomunote, tunaanza kuwa consider. Teleme alituletea vitu vya mingi tena vya maana. Juu ya kwanza alibadilisha maisha yetu. Teleme angekuyaka kama si wote matansio zilisha tu. Lakini selo na mafundisho basha tupatia, tulishajisikia kama hata baniangalia ndabakia Chantal. Habata nitosha kitu. Ile ilishanitia moyo na ikanitosha visarani nilikuwa navyo. Juu leo niko natumika kwa sheferi. Niko CLD. Wananiambia niangalie affaires sociales humanitaire. Musave de ya village ninasimamia wajeni. Mpaka leo mkomunote na mie ninajisikia kabie. Tena fier. Juu na ba mama bananiheshimia, na ba papa bananiheshimia, hata na valideri communautaire wanaheshimia. Association yetu inatumika bien na serikali, juu walisha tupatia ma autorisation de fonctionnement, tunafanya kama mulimo, tunafuga na tunafanya kupe kutiri. Teleme litusukuma mu sensibilisation. Ikatuambia tuende tusensibilize. Ngisi wazazi walikuwa waliachilia watoto, waambie wazazi mulemavu na anapaswa kusoma saa mtoto mwingine. Mulemavu saba na gabula mashamba na iko na pare yake saa mtoto saa mwingine. Teleme bakatufundisha ngisi kwa saa za heritage. Mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu na anaweza herite. Basi sema se yeye hana ya kufanya. Kama mtu iko mulemavu fizikma, mentalema ni mtu. Njo nasia sasa niko natoka kunyumba, ninaenda mukanisa, ninaambia wapastere, ninaenda kumasomo, ninaambia watoto wa masomo. Mtu mwenye anaishi na ulemavu, musikomu na mubagua se yeye hawafanane, hata kwa albinosi. Ni mtu sawa. Usiseme sitaikala na mwenzetu. Usiseme sitamchukulia. Chukulia haye kama kuko yenye na mushinda, umuchukulie na mukamata sawa wenzetu. Kuwezetu walemavu, tuko tunaenda tunawashauria. Basi batoshe zile masusi kwanza. Apure tusogeleane. Kisha tupendane. Zile masusi zitaisha na tutakuwa tunatembeleana kumajamaa huku na huku. Na kupitia zile mafundisho tutaenda mbele. Ndio maana tunasema WeAreAble. Mchavu tunasema inyanya.
Thank you so much. It works. So thank you so much, Inge, for sharing all these experiences. It really comes to life when you hear these, experiences. And we do have a bit of time for questions for Inge, so you can come and stand here. So if you're online, you can put your question there, but maybe there's a question here in the room. And then Angela is going to come to you with the microphone. Who dares?
Hi, my name is Martin, and I'm curious about if you have any program or framework for when the land rights are restored, ideally, to persons with disability. Do they get any support then how to manage these lands, or what is then the most common practice and the outcome of this?
So you mean how to use the land that they have then access to?
Yeah, exactly. Because I imagine that it must be very difficult.
Yes.
First, of course, to acquire it, but then afterwards to manage them as well.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the WeAreAble project actually works on lobby and advocacy. So we do not work on like, for example, training on farm practices, or also not on providing adapted farm equipment, for example. But what we do is try to link to other programs so that offer those services. So we do not provide these services within the WeAreAble project, but we do try to link to that. Yes.
So like partner organizations can...
partner organizations or maybe other projects. So sometimes the partners within WeAreAble, they all have various other projects as well in the countries where we work. So sometimes they can be linked to those projects that we can try, or to other partners or other organizations. It's not always possible, but it's what we try. Yeah.
Hi, Inga. Thank you so much for the presentation. So actually, 2 years ago, I was in Uganda and was talking to some colleagues which are running a program in northern Uganda and how they had helped women with disabilities or persons with disabilities, similar to your program. And I think one of the issues that came up was that the neighbors were feeling very resentful that certain NGOs are only helping persons with disabilities. And the woman in question was also worried about her physical safety once the project ended. So how do you resolve these sort of community dynamics, particularly when projects end? Mm-hmm. And is there a role for OPDs there, or is there a role for like maybe local authorities there to ensure sustainability?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, both OPDs and local governments. So we work together with OPDs and through OPDs. So we strengthen OPDs for lobby and advocacy. And also, like what I explained with the PIP approach, that's one of the ways of also having this conversation within the community to have the discussion that persons with a disability also have these rights, and that they are also then part of collective planning, so that they collaborate together, that persons with disability are really included in the process, and it's not a process of only the persons with the disability, but making it more inclusive. So that way, and then it's also supported by the local government. So that way, we really emphasize also the sustainability of this approach and our activities. Yes, but also in the presentation of Michelle, she will explain more about how these structures work of working with the local governments.
Great, thank you. I see one last question for Sander.
Hi, my name is Sander Schot from CBM Global. I have a question around the role of the Organization of Persons with Disabilities in this project. Like, what did they do? How were they involved? And I can imagine that for most of them, it's also quite a new area, land rights. So what did you do in terms of the project activities? And maybe just a couple of impressions.
So for the OPDs,
yes.
It's true that it's quite a new area, because usually they focus more on health and education, and so food security is quite a new area on that. So we supported them together with the consortium to look at their lobby agenda. This way we also try to strengthen the OPDs also to have more knowledge and also more impact in the field of food security, of inclusive food security. Yes, yeah. And working also through the ADF, African Disability Forum, as an umbrella organization, also looking together with them, how can we really strengthen OPDs on this theme, and also strengthen their lobby agenda on this theme.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Inge, again. Just a remark, at the end of the session, we will show a QR code to a goodie bag link, and there you can find more background materials, and we will also upload the latest version of the PowerPoint presentation. And for people here in the room, I also have a physical chocolate and QR code. So you will get that one for sure. So I just put it on the chair there, otherwise I might forget. I would like to ask Michelle to come to the front and guide us into the topic of the experiences in working together on this topic with local governments. So go ahead. Do you want to? I will click for you, or you want to click yourself? There you go.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope we're still a bit energized. I know it's been quite a long day. As you've already heard, my name is Michelle van Raalte. I work for VNG International, and I'm part also with this in the WeAreAble program. So I wanted to start off with using the Menti again, with the following question. Do you have experience working with local governments in Africa? And here you can answer the question with yes, no, or no, but experience in working with local governments in other continents. I see mostly yes, which is good. Okay. Then to the next question. and this is an open question. How would you describe your experience working with local governments? You can be honest. Interesting. I see surprisingly well, which is good to read. I see a couple of slow process, slowly, mixed, challenging. I see bureaucracy. So I think looking at this, I think the picture is quite clear, right? I think overall there's this idea, and it is often also true, that working with local governments can be difficult. It's not always the easiest to do. But I'm going to argue today that they can also be a facilitator in this process, and I will show you how. But maybe to start with who we are, because some of you might have heard of VNG or VNG International. But VNG stands for Vereniging van de Nederlandse Gemeenten, which translates to Association for Dutch Municipalities, which is actually the governing body that, that lobbies for what the 342 Dutch municipalities want. And the VNG was established in 1912, so they've been around for quite a while. And through the VNG, VNG International was established. And VNG International was originally established to link Dutch municipalities to municipalities worldwide and to create a knowledge exchange there. And we work on actually everything that falls under the mandate of local governments. And this can be cities, this can be regions, this can be districts. It really varies per context. And as you can see here, like a couple of topics that we work on is building effective public administration, involving citizens in decision-making processes, resilient cities, overall access to different kinds of services, and dealing with conflict, fragility, and migration, amongst others. And we actually operate across the globe. As you can see, we have a lot of different projects worldwide. So in 2024, we had 165 projects over the past 5 years, 38 million annual turnover, and we're active in 40 countries. In The Hague, we work with around 60 staff, but we work with a lot of different experts, local and international, around the world who have a great expertise in local governance. Then you may wonder, how does our work relate to disability inclusive food security? And here I want to go back to the first slide actually that Pauline showed is the UN Convention. And this is kind of the umbrella that also the WeAreAble operates under, which is the International Human Rights Treaty, which exists to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all disabled persons. Now, this sounds very beautiful, but how do you implement that? It's quite big. And for this, we need different actors, and the local governments are one of those actors. And how do we ensure that citizens' needs are taken into account? In the municipalities that we work in, we see that actually citizens stand quite close to their municipalities. We might recognize that also in the Netherlands, but I think it's even more in the countries that we work with. So the local governments can often best reflect the citizens' needs if they are aware. and then they can be translated into the services that are necessary. So here we go back to the 3 pathways that we've seen in the slide by Inge, about the different ways that we work in within the WeAreAble program. So there's the community mobilization part, there's the strengthening of disability organizations, and there's also engaged public authorities, and this is where V&G International comes in. And I think here it is very important to note that it's not as if these 3 pathways run separately, because we do not only work on increasing awareness of public authorities, but we also try to strengthen between those pathways. So making sure that organizations for persons with disabilities are linked to the public authorities and that they collaboratively make impact. So there are different ways that we do this. First of all, we use local inclusion agendas, and it's actually quite the same as the PIP approach in some way, because it brings together different types of organizations under different, with different kinds of, they, like for example, you have the organizations for persons with disabilities who have a specific role in advocating for rights, while the local authorities in this sense play a bigger role in implementing different conventions, and they really have to work together. So this local inclusion agenda brings those different actors together, and it's basically a tool to make sure that they can plan and create more accessibility across all the municipalities or local governments that we work in. And it can also lead to increased food security for all. So, of course, we've talked a lot about land rights, about food security in general, but also when it comes to land rights, local authorities often play quite a big role in ensuring that the land disputes are often minimized if they are aware again, and that there is more equal access to land. And here, I wanted to show this picture as well, because this is an example of such a LIA meeting. This was in Ethiopia. And you see here some people from organizations for persons with disabilities coming together with disability mainstreaming committees. And I think we can be quite proud of that with the WeAreAble program, because the disability mainstreaming committees are actually within local governments a couple of people who are really taking a step ahead in making sure that there is disability inclusion in the local governments. So they're from different offices who come together and they use checklists, all kind of different tools to make sure that there's more disability inclusivity. Then a couple of examples. So, for example, in Uganda, I wanted to show this example of the north of Uganda, where we work together with a woman called Angela, and she's a woman market vendor, and she has a physical disability, physical impairment on one hand. And it was very difficult for her in the market because people didn't want to buy her food because they thought that the food that she would hand with her impaired hand, that they would be poisoned. So it was very, very difficult for her to then get her income. So what we did is, as V&G International within the WeAreAble program, we supported the establishment of a coordination network of organizations for persons with disabilities, who then stood up for these women market vendors. And we saw that with those OPDs, together with the local governments, they all played their own role to make sure that the perceptions of the public were improving at some point, that the women market vendors also became leaders in the markets, and very important, that the markets also became more accessible. And this is an example of how this collaboration actually led to concrete results. Then also in Burundi, we supported local authorities to do kind of a competition for grants. And organizations for persons with disability could apply for those grants. And the local authorities were guided along this process. How can they be inclusive in also selecting, but also making sure that all the OPDs were aware of these competitions, and supporting them also to get their project approved. And well, this was quite a big competition, and a lot of different OPDs got these grants. So one of the examples was, I think it was about 85 persons with disabilities who got training in how to grow maize. And then just linking it back to the access to land rights, through all this collaboration in Burundi with the OPDs and the local authorities also made sure that persons with disabilities got free land certificates, which can often be something that's a great barrier for persons with disabilities to get access to land. And then a final example, and I think also really important not to forget, is if we really want to make a case here, we need good data. And yeah, for example, in Ethiopia, we worked on a project where well, you can see like 15 million persons with disability live in Ethiopia. This is around, I think, 18% of the population, so it's quite big. And we wanted to make that more visible. So we worked in different areas, and we collected data together with organizations for persons with disabilities. We collected data on what their needs are related to food security. And for this, we did quantitative data collection, but also key informant interviews to back up the data with stories. And yeah, we really looked at the Nothing About Us Without Us, because we wanted the OPDs to play a role not only in doing the surveys, but also the questionnaires themselves, make them together, and as a process really be inclusive in this. And then our goal is to also make sure that this data also links to national advocacy, so we can really show what the needs are. So these are just two examples of questions that we asked. So did your household experience a lack of food in the last 7 days? And here you see that 71% answered yes. So this is huge. And also, does the income of your household provide food security? And we actually see that never is 31%, rarely is 31%, sometimes is 28%, and only always is 7%. So if you see these percentages, they're quite shocking. And I think if you can present this well, visualize it well, have good stories behind it, then you can really advocate towards the national government as well with your story. So to conclude here, yeah, involving different stakeholders is essential. I think that's clear. And also local authorities, because yeah, there may be a lot of barriers for persons with disabilities, and of course it might be difficult and slow sometimes to work with local authorities. But if you involve them well, if you create awareness within the local authorities, they can actually also be a facilitator in this process. So bringing them together and then collecting the data. I think we need more data on what the needs are for persons with disabilities to really make a case. And I think once you synthesize and activate local authorities, that they can really support this process as well to create more disability inclusion in the world. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. You can keep the microphone because there might be questions. So thanks for sharing the experiences and explaining a bit more about the role of local governments in this process. It's really interesting to hear. And maybe there are questions from the public online, but maybe here as well. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and then Angela is coming with the microphone.
Hi, it's a question for both of you, actually. I was wondering, so what is the key argument that resonates with the people you're trying to convince? Because I guess referring to a UN convention is not really doing the trick, because there are so many challenges and there are so many this. So what is it really that makes people say, yeah, we want to support this?
the WeAreAble program?
Yeah, the WeAreAble. Yeah. Yeah, they could also say, this is a luxury thing. You can do that in Europe with all the, but here it's very hard. So I'm.
Yeah, I think there are two factors, two reasons. The first reason is actually that they have their rights, so there's more awareness on that. There's a discussion, and the second one is also that it benefits the whole community if persons with a disability are included and are also productive and are not being considered as a curse or being incapable of doing anything. So looking at giving persons with a disability access to land or including them in food security activities is benefiting the whole community. So it's creating awareness and having a discussion about that. So that's one. And the other one is that they really have this right. And these rights are often in place, but people are not aware of it. So these are the two important factors.
Yeah, and I think maybe as an example, for example, in Ethiopia, I talked to people in local governments and they mentioned how first they didn't want to provide any land for persons with disabilities because they had the idea that they wouldn't manage it well. But then in the end, they saw that they actually worked even harder because once they did have access to land, they also wanted to show that they actually knew how to work with it and produce even more, which in the end also supports the locality in that sense. So it was actually a win-win. So showing this, I think, is really important.
Great. Other question or question for debate?
Hi, thank you for those presentations. I have a question for Michelle. You talked about how you succeeded in changing the perceptions of female market vendors with disabilities. I'm curious to hear more about how you accomplished to do that. I'm from India and I've dealt with small towns and villages where social perception can truly be a barrier in exercising human rights. And in my limited time in the Netherlands, I do understand that these stigmas and these regions aren't foolproof either. And we just had an example of how the marital status and the gender is also an impediment in regions like this. So I wonder how, as an organization that works, members like you worked in the Netherlands, accomplished to succeed in changing the perceptions of a region in an African country towards women with disabilities as market vendors. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe important to indeed start with that. Of course, we work from the Netherlands, but we always work with people locally. So we always have teams of local VNG international staff also in the countries that we work with, who have, for example, close bond with local municipalities, who visit them a lot and make sure that the activities are implemented well. And in this case, I think it's especially the importance of the OPDs and the local authorities working together. So first creating the awareness about the issue, then the local OPDs taking their role in sensitization, and actually the local authorities creating more of the accessibility part. So first, it's important to create the awareness that this is a problem. And then it's also the different roles that the different actors have in this regard to make it better, because there is like this part on community sensitization, which is taken up by, for example, organizations for persons with disabilities, but also by the public authorities, because of course citizens need that interaction with public authorities to also sometimes understand that these women market vendors are not, there's nothing wrong with having an impaired hand, like this is not poisoning. Like it's also creating, making sure that these stereotypes are taken away. And sometimes this starts with creating awareness in the local authorities about this issue, and also with OPDs together.
Thank you so much. I'm looking at time, so I would like to come to a conclusion. So thank you Inge, you can give some final thoughts there, and we'll, as public, you still also have a chance to speak. So don't worry. Go ahead, Inge.
No, I just wanted to add one more thing. When we were talking about the topic of food security for OPDs, that it's quite a new topic. Also, land rights is not a topic that has been on the agenda often for OPDs. So I just want to point out that within WeAreAble, we have a land rights specialist also, and she developed a manual also for inclusive land rights for persons with a disability. So, and that manual is also being used with OPDs. It's also available on our website, on the WeAreAble website. So also if you go to the website, you can also find this manual.
It's in the goodie bag.
It is in the goodie bag even. So yeah, I just wanted to point out so also on this topic.
Great, thank you so much for that. Indeed, there is this, in the goodie bag, there is this link to the training manual and other background resources. Also, there were some data shown in these presentations. You can also find the reports there. But we are coming to a conclusion, and we have been talking a lot, and I think it would be really lovely if you could reflect on what could be your role in promoting disability inclusive food security / land rights. And at the beginning of the session, we saw there people here from NGOs, but also from research, government. So maybe you could put it in the chat, in the Menti, but you can also just maybe, raise your hand and I'll come with the mic.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Linkletter with SNV. I'm the Global Technical Advisor for Gender Equality and Social Inclusion. I would say even within my own organization, it's a challenge to promote disability inclusion. Oftentimes we think about social inclusion, we think about men and women and youth, and then a lot of people just stop there. So I find if you can be involved in the planning of things as early as possible, whether it's a meeting or a conference or a workshop, and you can influence who is going to be invited to those kind of events or who's going to speak or participate in a panel. And then that's the opportunity to reach out to organizations for people with disabilities and have them come and participate. And I've seen firsthand it is a life-changing experience for many of the participants who've never interacted with people with disabilities before. And you can really see them having these sort of aha moments and shifting their perspective of what social inclusion means. So please get in early. Just Google. If you don't know any or you don't know anybody, just Google, and sometimes you can find organizations for people with disabilities and just invite them. And that's just having them at the table is a good starting point if you're really starting at zero, I would say.
Right, thanks for sharing that experience. That's really great, nice example. Anyone else who would like to say a word? Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Sylvia Ortega. I'm project officer at Wilde Gansen. I would like to consider, I work with some OPDs, but I wouldn't like to isolate them, rather put them together with women unions, for example, who are already dealing with land right problems and food security problems. So instead of just only focusing on OPDs, I would like to make a consortium with other women in this case, but other people confronting the same problem, or landless people also.
Great, thanks. That's a very practical idea. Thanks for that. In the meantime, Sanna, is there something that came in?
A lot of people are mentioning working together or strengthening OPDs and local governments as well. Or in teaming up with other organizations who focus on food security, and campaigning and spreading awareness, talking about the subject. I think those are the most mentioned.
Great. Anyone else from the room who would like to share? Well, then, yeah, go ahead.
Well, maybe just, so I didn't say my name. It's Gemma van der Haar. I'm in Wageningen University, but also chairing LandAc. And you approached us about this topic, and we made some noise about it in the conference. And it really struck me how to many in the land community, this was a new topic. People think about inclusivity, but they never thought about making this link. So I think we have some work to do there, and I want to congratulate you on putting it on our agenda as well.
Great, and thanks. It's great to have you here. Thanks so much. All right, then we have come to the end of this session. On the slide, we will show the QR code to the digital goodie bag. And if you want to stay up to date about disability inclusion in development and humanitarian action, you can also subscribe to the DCDD newsletter. And Angela is now walking to the back where the chocolates and the QR codes, you can grab one if you go out of the room. So I would really like to thank you. Oh, right, you're still looking at it, right? I really would like to thank you for your active participation. I really enjoyed. I think there will be like a plenary closing session starting within 15 minutes, and after that there are drinks and networking. So yeah, it would be lovely to have a chat together. And well, for now, thanks, and we'll talk after the session, right?